These words cut through the air like a blade. Lung cancer. Final stage. The doctor avoided eye contact. His voice was steady, like a metronome. Time is short. If there's anything you want to do it now. William nodded. An ordinary nod, as if someone had just informed him of a bus delay. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't inquire how much time was left or what the options were. He had heard it all before: a different doctor, a different office, the same diagnosis. Only this time, it was final. He stood up, put on his hat as usual, thanked the doctor, walked out into the corridor, past the reception where someone was laughing loudly on the phone. Outside, it was warm. Spring was almost over, and the air smelled of grass. He stood at the pedestrian crossing, watching the cars. People hurried past, somewhere, to someone, on errands, out of habit, and he just stood there. Suddenly, everything inside him became quiet. Not deaf, not empty, just quiet. Like an evening by the lakeside. He knew what he was going to do. And he knew why. He opened the door with a key that had been creaking in the lock for the past 10 years. In the hallway, heavy paws slowly dragged across the floor. "Hey, Buck." The old retriever lifted his head, wagged his tail. Then he stood up and walked over. His muzzle was gray, his eyes cloudy, but recognition was instant. William knelt down, hugged the dog. Buck sighed and nuzzled his nose into William's chest. The attic smelled of dust and old wood. William felt for the lid of the trunk, removed the lock. The wooden lid creaked open. Inside was a backpack. The very same one. He placed it on the table, brushed off the dust, checked the straps, cracked but still holding. He unfolded the map, spread it out on the kitchen table. Red dots marked with a pen long since discarded. A line running through the pass, past the lake, through the forest. There, beyond the forest, his life had begun. His first expedition, his first confession, his first success, and then his first rejection. He approached the cabinet. In the bottom drawer, hidden under books, were items he hadn't opened in 20 years. A photograph. In it, 3 figures, him, a freckled woman, and Buck, still a puppy. All 3 in front of a tent, by a campfire. He held a cup of coffee. The woman laughed. The dog licked someone's hand. He looked at the picture for a long time, then folded it and tucked it into the backpack's pocket. Next to it, he placed an envelope labeled, "If found, give to Catherine." In the bedroom, he slowly packed his things: a flashlight, a first aid kit, a flask. Automatically. Each movement was familiar, as if his hands remembered what to do. The dog stayed close. He didn't bark or whine. He just sat nearby, watching as his owner packed the last item into the backpack, that same photograph. "We're going again, Buck," he said. But this time, for the last time. The dog moved closer, rested his head on William's knees. William ran his hand through the fur. "There, where I was alive. I want to die there." In the kitchen, the kettle boiled. He didn't go to it. Just closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, the journey begins. The light outside was just beginning to fade when Tom closed the door behind him. On it, he left a short note: "Gone to the mountains. Don't look for me." He didn't look back. Beside him walked Bo, an old golden retriever with a graying muzzle and eternally kind eyes. Their backpacks were almost equally heavy. Tom's was on his shoulders, Bo's in his eyes, the weight of years, the memory of steps they had shared. They walked the first mile in silence. The wind rustled the tops of the pines, spreading the scent of needles and moisture. The path was familiar. They had walked it dozens of times, once with friends, with children, with the woman Tom loved. Now, just the 2 of them. And that was enough. Bo walked beside him, never rushing ahead. He didn't play or search for scents, he just walked, keeping an eye on Tom. The dog knew this journey was different from the others. Tom stopped by a fallen tree, sat down, and took out his flask. Bo lay at his feet, nuzzling his boot. "Remember," Tom said, looking at the branches, "this is where you first went into the water. Right from the shore. Jamie got soaked trying to pull you out." Bo didn't answer, just sighed softly. By noon, they had covered several more miles. Their legs were tired, but their bodies remembered the rhythm. Descents gave way to ascents, and the stones underfoot crunched softly. After lunch, Tom found the old campsite, a flat spot between the rocks, sheltered from the wind. He pitched the tent, not confidently, but skillfully. His hands remembered the movements, even if his joints protested. Bo lay down next to him, not asking for food, just resting his head on his paws. At night, the wind blew strongly. It rattled the tent walls, but Tom slept soundly, his head resting on the dog, like a warm pillow of memories. He woke up from a cough. dry, tearing from within, as if his lungs were filled with sand. At first, he tried to suppress it, but then he coughed so hard he doubled over. There was blood on his palm. He wiped it on the inside of his jacket, not looking again. Bo lifted his head, whimpered softly. "It's okay, Bo," Tom whispered. "Just the mountain air." In the morning, he put on his backpack slowly. His shoulders ached, his breath was short, but he didn't complain. He just looked towards the pass. Beyond it lay the other side of the mountains, wild, without connection, without people. Just the sky, the rocks, and solitude. That's where he was headed. "Come on, old friend," he said. "It's time." Bo didn't answer. He just moved closer. The ascent was steep. Stones slipped under his boots, the air grew thinner. Tom walked step by step, stopping more often than he wanted. Beside him, Bo looked back every few minutes. He didn't understand why Tom was walking so slowly, but he didn't go ahead. By noon, they reached the summit. The sun broke through the clouds, the horizon shimmered with a glacier. Tom stood, gazing into the distance, and suddenly realized he wouldn't be coming back. He didn't know how much longer he could hold on. A day? 2? But one thing was certain, this was the place he wanted to reach. Not for death, no. For silence, for farewell. Bo sat next to him. He didn't bark or wag his tail. He just sat, as if sensing the weight of the moment. Tom placed his hand on Bo's neck. "We made it, buddy. Now it's real." He woke up before sunrise. The cough came first, sharp, tearing from within, with a taste of iron. The man leaned his forehead against the cool stone and waited for the attack to pass. Then, as if nothing had happened, he shouldered his backpack and called out, "Baxter, come on, old friend." The dog stood up slowly, stretched, and softly snorted. They set off along the narrow path, where on one side a cliff rose like a wall, and on the other, a precipice was strewn with dry pine needles. The man walked slowly. With each step, he seemed to fade. He stopped more frequently, leaning heavily on his staff. Baxter kept looking back, slowing his pace, as if sensing something was wrong. At one of the rest stops, the man sat on a flat rock, stretched his legs, and looked at the dog for a long time. "You know, Baxter," he said, "I thought we would lead this place together. But now I don't know." The dog sat down next to him, ears pressed back. The man reached out and scratched behind his ear. "You were with me in those years when I still believed in people. And you stayed when I stopped believing. You stayed when everyone else left. And now, I fear, it's my turn to go." Baxter lay down at his feet, pressing his whole body against him, as he used to do in his youth when they camped by the fires in the forests of Montana. But now there was no fire. Only the cold wind and a sense of something irrevocable approaching. At the campsite before the pass, the man tried to eat. He took out a can, opened it, stared at it, and put it away. A piece of hardtack broke off in his hands. He just shook his head. Baxter ate his portion silently, slowly. He looked at his master with concern. That night, the dog didn't sleep. At first, he just lay down next to him. Then he got up and started pacing in circles, stopping, looking at the man. He slept restlessly, softly moaning in his sleep. Baxter leaned his muzzle close to his face, inhaled, and didn't calm down. Something in his chest tightened. At dawn, the rain began. At first, drops fell on the leaves high above, then turned into a heavy, icy downpour. The mountains were shrouded in gray mist. The wind grew stronger with each hour. They walked in the rain almost all day. The sun didn't show itself even once through the gloomy clouds. The clay underfoot was slippery. Stones trembled under their boots. The man no longer spoke. He just walked, or tried to walk. Each step was like lifting an entire mountain. He no longer looked ahead. He looked down, where his strength faded with each step. When the downpour reached its peak, and the wind tore the breath from his lungs, they found a ledge. Under it, a small dry spot. The man reached it almost on all fours, dropped his backpack, sat down, leaned against the rock, and closed his eyes. Baxter followed, shook himself off, looked at his master, and held softly, as if to himself. The man didn't respond. "Hey," he rasped, opening his eyes. "It's okay. Just tired." He forced a smile. And at that moment, he passed out. His body slumped to the ground. His face paled. His fingers twitched. His breathing became ragged, heavy, almost silent. Baxter rushed over. At first, he just nudged his shoulder with his nose. Then he licked his cheek, whimpered softly. Licked again. Pressed his muzzle against his chest, trying to feel his breath. Sat down. Held. Then lay down next to him, pressing his side against the man's body. He warmed him as best he could. breathed into his face, licked his eyelids, as if hoping he would open his eyes. The rain didn't stop. Water dripped from the ledge, forming a puddle by his boots. Baxter didn't move. He just breathed slowly, heavily. His eyes never left the man's face. They lay together in that gray, wet nothingness, far from the world. One already gone. The other not yet ready to let go. Morning came silently. Mist slid across the ground, as if exhaling the last remnants of the night. The dog hadn't slept. He lay next to the man, his nose pressed against his chest. It rose slowly, barely noticeably. One breath, another, a pause. The dog tensed, his ears twitched. Then another breath, but it was shallower, more labored. He stood up, circled the man, licked his cheek, nudged his cold fingers with his nose. No response. He touched his shoulder with his paw. The man didn't move. Then he started to pace, from the rock to the sleeping bag, from the backpack to the piece of cloth that served as a mat. He whimpered, knocked over his bowl, nudged his face again. The man was unconscious. The dog sat down, looked towards the forest where they had come from, remembered the sound of the stream, the sharp scent of pine, the bridge made from a fallen tree. In his mind, the path appeared sharp, winding, cold. His path, their path. He turned to the man, as if waiting for permission. The man didn't move. Only a soft moan, almost a sigh. That was enough. The dog bolted. Stones struck his paws. Branches lashed his sides. He raced down the path as if in a dream. Every turn was familiar. Every tree, every crack in the rock, known. He stumbled, fell, got up. In one place, he got stuck between roots, but broke free with force. The rain started again. He didn't slow down. Mud clung to his fur. His nose no longer smelled the scent, only dampness and wet bark. But he knew the direction. He felt the path. Sometimes he stopped, looked back. There, far away in the mountains, a man. His man. Without him, nothing made sense. He ran on. The mountains faded behind him. At the edge of the slope, a valley opened up. Below, a small settlement, a few houses, smoke from chimneys, a road washed out by the rain. The dog stumbled, slid down the slope, hit his chest against a rock, but got up. He limped. His paws were bloody, his fur hung in clumps, his eyes were inflamed, but he made it. He rushed into the settlement like a ghost, barked, scratched at doors, paced the street. One of the men came out of a shed, froze. The retriever recognized him, the scent, the gait, the voice. An old friend of his master. What's wrong? The man crouched down. The dog lunged at him, grabbed his sleeve, tugged, barked, pulled, turned towards the forest, then grabbed the cloth with his teeth again. Wait, the man stood up, looked at the road. Where is he? Did he come with you? The dog dashed towards the trail, looked back, waited. The man understood everything. Within 10 minutes, a group had gathered. 4 men, backpacks, radios, first aid kits. He's leading us. Let's go. One of them shouted. The dog ran ahead, not looking back. He didn't feel his paws. He didn't know the time. He just kept going. Behind every leap, desperation. Behind every turn, hope. This was not just a path. It was a promise. The downpour intensified. The rocks became slippery. One of the men stumbled, cut his hand. Another strayed from the path. The dog returned, barked, led him back. Time was slipping away. The day was drawing to a close. The mountains were close again. The dog didn't slow down. He knew where he needed to be, and he would lead them there, no matter the cost. The dog suddenly stops, lifts his head, and freezes. The wind changes. He smells something. Not just a trail, breath. Barely perceptible, almost dissolved in the snow. He raises his muzzle, scans the space between the trees, and dashes off. He's picked up a scent, says David, a rescuer in an orange vest. Let's go. They run as best they can. Slip, grab onto branches, sink into the snow. The wind picks up. Snow flies into their faces, but the dog doesn't slow down. He knows exactly where to go. We'll lose light soon, one of the guys shouts. We have an hour, no more. The dog doesn't look back. He veers off the trail, heads left, towards the dense slope and icy rocks. The rescuers exchange glances but follow him. Time is not on their side. None of them knows how far it is. No one says out loud that it might already be too late. The dog reaches a narrow ridge. Below this pause, a precipice. But he moves confidently, clinging to the rocks. His tail is tense, his ears pinned back. He sniffs the ground, surveys the slope, suddenly changes direction. There, under an overhanging rock, where the snow is slightly softer, He stops and starts digging. "Here!" shouts David. "I see something." They rush to the rock, brush away the snow. Beneath it, an unmoving body, the face barely visible, but it's him, the old man. He lies as if asleep. The dog presses against him, licks his face, whimpers. The man doesn't move. One of the rescuers checks his pulse. He's alive, weak, but there. "Get the stretcher, quick." The wind lashes harder. One wrong step and the rock could crumble. They work silently, precisely, as they were trained. One covers the man with a thermal blanket, another prepares oxygen. A third holds the first aid kit and radio. The signal is weak, but it's enough. Reinforcements are already on the way. The dog doesn't leave his side. He sits next to him, his muzzle pressed against his shoulder. His breath is visible in the cold air. He doesn't cry, he just waits. The oxygen mask is placed on the man's face. He stirs. His eyelids flutter, his lips move. The dog moves closer, presses against his chest. "Greg, can you hear me?" asks one of the rescuers. "You're safe. We found you. You're home." The man opens his eyes. At first, his gaze is unfocused. Then it locks onto the golden fur, the wet nose, the familiar eyes. "Charlie," he breathes out. "You found them." He smiles weakly. His hand reaches for the dog, his fingers brush through the fur. He pulls him close, weakly but firmly. The dog freezes. He feels this embrace with every cell. They lie like this for a few seconds, as if the whole world has stopped. Just the wind and the snow. Just the two of them, a man and his dog. The rescuers exchange glances. No one speaks, but each understands what is happening. This is not just a rescue. It's a homecoming. Whether it's forever or just a new chapter, no one knows. The man closes his eyes. His breathing is steady. He's still here. For now. And beside him, the dog who didn't give up. Who knew the way back. Who chose to go. The snow falls softly, as if reluctant to disturb them. The ward smelled of sterile cotton and something bitter, as if the air itself understood how much pain had passed through here. Early morning. Outside the window, a gray dawn, cold and dull. On the white bed, an old man. His eyes half open, his breathing shallow but steady. He's conscious. He's alive. The door opened slightly. A doctor entered, young, with tired eyes. He stopped in the doorway, as if afraid to disturb the moment. He looked for a second, then slowly approached, checked the machine by the bed, looked at the patient, and said, almost in disbelief, "It's a miracle. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have found you." The old man smiled weakly. He turned his head to the side. Next to the bed, curled up, lay his golden retriever. His wet fur had dried in patches. His paws were bandaged. His tail twitched slightly, a gentle tremor in his sleep, as if he too saw something distant and kind. The nurse came in several times. She left food, checked the floor, changed the bandages. No one chased the dog away. Everyone just nodded. This was not just a dog, this was someone important. The old man barely spoke. He just looked at the dog. Sometimes he closed his eyes, to rest. Sometimes he whispered something, not with words, but with something internal, understood only by the two of them. The retriever sometimes lifted his head, sighed, and fell asleep again, resting his muzzle on his front paws. One night, the nurse heard the old man whisper, "You did it. Thank you, friend." He left the hospital on a cold morning. In his hand, a thin folder with his discharge papers. On his back, an old backpack, now almost empty. Beside him, the dog, with a slow but steady gait. They didn't rush. They sat on a bench in the park. To the left, a lake. The water was still, like a mirror. To the right, trees, not yet in leaf, just a hint of spring. The dog lay down next to him, resting his head on the old man's boot. He didn't move. He just looked straight ahead. At home, he turned on his laptop. He typed a headline, "He, my hero." He attached a photograph, the dog against the backdrop of the mountains, covered in mud, his eyes alert, his ears pricked, his gaze sharp and alive. He didn't seek grandeur. He simply told the story as it was. About the journey, the fall, the pain, and the rescue. About how, in the most terrifying moment, not a human, but a dog, made a decision and didn't back down. The next morning, the photo and story appeared on the front page of the local newspaper. Below it, the byline, author Thomas Gray, 72 years old, former teacher, grateful man. A couple of days later, they sat on the same bench again. Passers-by walked past. Some recognized them, smiled, nodded. But the old man didn't respond. He just sat, looking at the lake, the sky, the slowly drifting clouds. The dog sat beside him, quiet, warm, without words. Home is not walls. Home is who sits beside you when all is said and done.